Hello, friends, and welcome to another Nostalgia Talk. I'm James, and I am very happy to be joined today by Pat Fraley. Did I pronounce your last name right?
Well, you actually did good. And I'm so pleased you hear it right. That was Crank, by the way.
Yeah, Pat does the voice of Krang in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, among other voices on that show, such as Casey Jones and Baxter Stockman. He's been on The Tick, Goof Troop, Darkwing Duck. He did the voice of Ace in G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, and also was the substitute voice of Buzz Lightyear in various Toy Story-related stuff, filling in for Tim Allen. So, sorry?
He was very busy at the time doing movies, and so I did all the toys, some of the skating stuff, I was very busy because he was very busy, plus his career.
Yeah, he was in quite a lot of films at the time. This was like the mid '90s.
Yeah, the Santa Claus stuff, and he was on the Disney lot. He was doing Home Improvement.
Oh yeah, that was a funny show.
Was it?
Yeah, I've seen it a few times. It's pretty funny. So let's get right into the interview. First question is, how did you become interested in voice acting?
Because I was failing in theater.
Seriously?
Oh yeah, a lot of people that I worked with, Doris Butler, who was about 4'10", Mel Blanc, Jim Cummings, who is arguably the best voiceover ever.
I love Jim Cummings.
Well, he was in, he plays Winnie the Pooh.
Right.
You know his voice there. But he's done all sorts of stuff. And he was he was a musician, but he wasn't doing too hot. And,
oh, wow.
So in some ways, failure ushers in some of us into what we do. I was in a Stray at the time, doing Shakespeare, because at my age, when I wanted to be an actor, all I could do was theater. You couldn't. There were no stand-up classes. There was no improv classes. That was it. But by the time I got out of graduate school and moved to Australia to do Shakespeare, I found out I was better at character voices than I was on stage.
Oh,
so
wow.
What are you gonna do?
Do you remember the very first ever voice role after that discovery? The very first ever voice role that you did in TV and film?
Yeah, Scooby-Doo Goes Hollywood.
Cool.
I stayed until, I stayed there. I emigrated there, did Shakespeare, did a movie, did this and that, and started voiceover. Then I came back to the States and moved down to L.A. in about 79. I was 30.
Cool.
And I got hired on a Scooby-Doo at Hanna-Barbera, and it was a horrible, show. It was the Variety magazine, who used to do all the reviews of stuff. It was the Biz magazine. The headline was Scooby-Doo Doo-Doo.
Oh. Oh, that's quite the review there.
Yeah, it was an ouch. Not to me. I didn't care. But I went down there, and now, you figure I'm 30 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first cartoons made for TV by Hanna-Barbera, and that was in about 1958. So I was 9, right? So I walk into this place where there's all these people, and I'm nervous as a cat, and I hear a voice that took me back to when I used to see those cartoons. It was Don Messick, who did Scooby-Doo. Doris Butler was in the shows too, but Don Messick, and what a trip! I mean, when I have fans that are 30 or 35, and they remember when they were 10 or whatever, and I do Krang or Barry Thompson, Bert Thompson or Baxter Stockman, they flip out. Well, I get that, because I flipped out.
So, going on to the topic of some of those characters that you just did, such as Krang and Baxter Stockman. So, I think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I think that's what you're probably most well known for, being the voices of Krang and Casey Jones and Baxter Stockman. How did that come about?
Well, I was called in on an audition to replace the director
Oh,
who had directed the whole show on a Saturday, which is bad because it's more money, and he'd taken 4 big roles himself. And it irritated the producer, and he fired him. And I was hired to replace the character voices: Vern Thompson, Baxter Stockman, Vernon, and Krang. The 4 that he did.
wow.
I ended up doing 3 because I said, Fred, I can't do all 4. I can't do them. You know, it's too much of a separation problem. So I got called in on an audition. I got this sheet and it said Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I thought that'll never go anywhere. Stupid title, right? And so I Krang, the evil bodiless blob of a brain, but funny. And he said,
Absolutely.
okay, Pat Fraley, go. Give me a couple of minutes, because who has that in their stockpile, you know? And so I worked it out really fast, went and did the audition. It turned out to be the most commercially successful job I ever did, and also the strangest voice I ever did.
Well, you did a pretty good job at it.
Yeah, 200 shows, and you know, one of my best friends, Brad Garrett, has done it for a movie. Michael Bay hated mine. You know, it was too silly. But in those days, it was a silly show.
Right.
The first, you know, we did 200 shows, and I was in the first cab with James Avery and, you know, Barry Gordon and Townsend Coleman and Rob Paulsen, and we all were silly. Well, it got darker because our culture got darker, which is good, you know.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes.
You just mentioned James Avery, who, in addition to doing Splinter in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, his other well-known... Sorry?
I think he played Shredder, didn't he?
Maybe.
Splinter. Who was the Pete Renegade? The rat that was so likely. Was that
I think that was Splinter.
Splinter.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Oh, okay. So James was Shredder. He was the one that was like this all the time, man.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Another role that's very popular that he did outside of animation was as Uncle Phil on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which is actually one of my favorite retro nostalgic shows.
Right. Well, he left our show, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, to go online. Now, he was a wonderful Shakespearean actor. He's dead now.
Right.
And went into that. And I've done one other cartoon show with him before that. He and Brad Garrett and Charlie Adler. It was called Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling. And I knew he was a Johnny One Note, one of these cartoons. He was always one way, right?
Yeah.
So that meant I could go all over the place. And we became known as the odd couple from outer space.
Yeah, I absolutely love The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You actually did a pretty good impression of James Avery there.
Yeah, well, you know, I was, 300 plus shows? He was a delightful guy. Kind of a snob, but delightful.
So, you said you have seen the Michael Bay Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles films. I saw the first one. It was entertaining. Have you seen the latest series, Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
James, to tell you the truth, I never saw any of the films.
Oh.
And I've only seen about 6 of the episodes that I did.
Oh.
Because I was busy making stuff.
Right.
You know, I've done hundreds of cartoon shows. And when you do them, you're like a plumber. You don't go around to Home Depot and check out the cisterns. It's just a way of life.
Fair enough. And you've also gotten to be a part of several other animated TV projects. Some that you were talking about before, such as the Flintstones, Jetsons, and others such as The Tick, Darkwing Duck, Little Mermaid, Goof Troop, Garfield and Friends. And so how does it come into play, you doing multiple characters on that show? Is that because they know your voice and they hear your voice in these particular characters that they want you to do?
Well, for years, I guess about 10 years, our contract, we're rate players, was 3 voices for the price of 1.
Okay.
And that changed in the late 80s to 2 voices plus a 10% bump for the third. So you had to be the dog, the duck, and the extra bee. Our producer on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was frugal, shall we say frugal, and he didn't have guests. So we had to do everything. They go, okay, we need an Asian professor. Pat, you're light on your contract, because I knew I only had two, I said, well, I can't do Asian. They say, well, you do now. So we got a heck of a education on the spot, and versatility was very, very important for a cartoon player. It still is, but less than it used to be, because they have guests.
Right. One of my favorite films from my childhood, a very nostalgic film for me, is Stuart Little, and I also really liked the sequel. I was about 9 months old when Stuart Little came out, so that I didn't see in the theater. I saw the second one, and I had heard that you did the voice of the Falcon in the Stuart Little animated series. I haven't watched that show in a while, and in the film, that was originally done by James Woods. Did you have to watch Stuart Little 2 in order to do that?
No, I didn't. I loved it. And here's the funny part, James.
Okay.
I do impressions like I do Jack Nicholson, and he's an old guy now, but he was around when you were young. And I feel like I even kind of look at him and kind of cross one eye like I had a little weed. Well, James Woods, I just talk like him.
Okay.
I don't feel like him at all, okay? But I can talk like him. Yeah. So they probably, I don't know how it came down, whether it was an audition or they just called me up, but I got the role and probably did something like him or they talked me into it.
Nice.
I can't remember. Maybe they said, well, it was done by James Woods. Can you do him? And of course, like any good actor, I went, yeah. Then you go on and learn. And probably just opened my mouth and they went, that's good. And I went, what? Okay.
So for a lot of these parts, basically, they just kind of like call you up and ask, can you do like an impression of something?
Well, no, you audition for most everything, and I always have. And when they're a sound-alike, I study the sound if I'm in the pocket. Because, for example, like Buzz Lightyear, well, you can hear I sort of sound like, Buzz Lightyear, to infinity and residuals. Hello, Space Cadet. I protect the air, And what I did was I auditioned for it, and I knew it was 80% there. Well, the 10% will kill you. But I got a feeling that Tim Allen was doing an impression of John Wayne. When you hear it, I'll drift into John Wayne. I protect the innocent from the evil sworn enemy of the, you hear it? Where it's like John Wayne. Oh.
Sounds
Indians never attack at night, kid. Kid.
I hear a little bit of Yogi Bear in there as well.
Hey, boo-boo, he's talking like that. He's exuberant. But anyway, it was enough to pull me to the top, and I worked 9 years doing Buzz Lightyear. But it was really Tim Allen's impression of a hero.
Nice. I never really thought about that before. I figured that Woody would have come from the Western type films, kind of. Like, most specifically, the opening of Toy Story 3. And, of course, the opening of Toy Story. But the opening of Toy Story 3 was almost an imitation of the opening of Toy Story. But, it didn't showcase a kid playing. It just showcased a kid's imagination from what they see in their head.
Right. Well, I think you're right. I think you've thought about it more than I have. I think Tom was just being silly, and he brought in the Western part because he's a Western character. But
Fair.
So I just always got the idea that it hurt his throat to do it. Always has, because he goes so high. He talks, very exuberant character. But I never thought of the Western part of that. But I think he fit into that. He's a good actor.
Tom Hanks, absolutely.
Yeah.
He's what, in my mind, being a film student, we we look at the way that actors work, I feel like Tom Hanks is, he can. If it's a funny movie, he can be funny. If it's a serious movie, he can be serious. That's real acting.
Yeah, yeah. Acting is pretending.
Right.
And pretense is always pretense means to stretch. So what are you stretching? Well, you stretch the truth. You stretch yourself to the point where you have done something like it and use that. And I think that's fundamental to his abilities. Is he's able to pretend and to stretch into something he's done before or something that he has experienced before. And that can be drama or it can be comedy.
Right. So another famous voice that you did that I actually mentioned in the intro is Ace in G.I. Joe: A Real American Hero. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yes, that's a funny story too.
Okay.
Here's what happened. I did Ace, and it was really close to what I did. And it was, he's a smart aleck, but it was me, just like that. Well, they killed me in an episode. I went to the page and went, where's Ace? And someone said, he didn't come back. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I was dead.
So you had no idea.
I had no idea. And so I was up in Seattle doing some work away from Los Angeles, which is about 1,000 miles.
Right.
I think it's about 1,000, yeah. And there's a call for new Centurions, or the Centurions. And his character, Matt, in it. And I thought, well, Ace is dead, I'll use his voice. Which was like this, right? About like that. And at the same time, there was a character that was called for, in the same show, called Ace. Now, Neil Ross looked at that and said, well, they killed off Pat's Ace, so I'll use his voice. So we both got cast in the same show, 65 episodes, which is like $100,000. And I get a call from the producer, and they say, well, one of you has to go. It's the same voice, because Neil's close to mine. So I called Neil and said, get up from my office. We're going to figure this out. So I went as low as I could. I went down to where as low as I can, like Red Star. Speed of the Puma. And he was, high. Well, that poor guy, we both got cast, but the poor guy only heard from the director all the time during the sessions, Neil, higher, because I'd gone to the producer and said, I can't go lower.
Wow.
And so poor Neil was told to be higher all the time. So it was way up here. It was like Don Knotts. We'll play the Barney Fife,
So how did you get the role of Ace?
That way. I auditioned for it, and I knew the producer, and he knew I could do the work, and so I got cast in that show. Just like Neil did. He read the script and did a voice. And that's how we get cast in these shows. Now, sometimes, yeah, it happens, they know us, and we've worked together. Like Fred Wolf called me for the audition for Crank because I'd done a movie with him.
Oh wow.
I can't remember the title, it had Bunny in it, the All-American Bunny or something. And Barry Gordon had been in that show, too. So he got cast. So they know of us, but they still don't give it away. Once in a while, they'll give you some, but no, it's usually you have to audition. Why? Because they have to play it for other people, for one thing. They have to play it for the producers or the money people.
Right. Did you see the animated G.I. Joe film that came out around the time of the series?
No, I didn't.
Okay, me neither.
There's a joke to that, is that after they did the movie, our director in G.I. Joe was Wally Burr, and he was a tough one to get. 12-hour recording sessions and do it 10 times and all that stuff. And Orson Welles was in that show.
Sweet.
The movie. Yeah, of G.I. Joe, along with Michael Bell, who played Duke, and I think Don Johnson was in that movie too, his voice.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He was.
Yeah, he died, Orson Welles, after doing the voice for G.I. Joe.
Oh my God.
And the joke was Wally Burr killed Orson Welles.
Oh wow.
There's this reputation like him to do things once or twice. And the joke was he probably made him do something 10 times, and later he killed him. I don't know. It was just funny.
Orson Welles is such a great, actor, filmmaker. He was just such a arts legend. I'll say.
Yeah, yeah. And if you hear his radio, like is it called Lime? He did a character called Lime in a movie, and became famous for that. And he did a radio show, a prequel to that, because he's killed in the movie. And it's just brilliant.
Nice.
He was a brilliant guy to do. They used to take him by ambulance from radio show to radio show in New York because he was so popular doing different shows. And he could do it. I guess he could read right off the page and cold read and do brilliant work.
So he would get transported by ambulance. That's really something.
Yeah, in New York, to get him on time to one place to another, they put him in the back of an ambulance and drive him to a different session.
I can just imagine how many people that were driving around the way the ambulance was were probably freaking out, but it turns out somebody was just trying to get to a shoot.
Yeah, well, he was that popular, and they had to get him from one place to another, and that's how they did it in New York. Can you imagine that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And with how busy New York is.
Yeah.
I can just imagine all the traffic jams, too.
He was a busy guy. He worked and worked and worked. He loved working. He once, Peter Jason's a friend of mine, a little older than I am, and he was his assistant. And he once, later on in his career, Orson Welles called him and goes, "Peter, maybe I'm mulhauling near Coldwater." He goes, "Yeah, why? We're shooting." "What are we shooting?" "I don't know." He just arrived and started shooting.
Funny. So, as you and I were talking about, you filled in for Tim Allen as the voice of Buzz Lightyear on various Toy Story-related video games and commercials, which, and you just talked a little bit about how you got that. You were basically trying to match Tim Allen, and Tim Allen, you felt, was trying to match John Wayne.
Yeah, that was the key to me getting the role, was I wasn't doing just Tim Allen. I was doing Tim Allen's version of a hero, which had that kind of rhythm to it, well, like John Wayne. So I figured that out, and that's how I got the role. But I was constantly directed, because it's not a marriage made in heaven. It's not as close as some people come to doing a sound-alike.
Right.
In fact, one way, I had a favored nations deal, which meant I got the same as Woody, right? Well, what the producers didn't know at the time was that Tom had made a deal with Pixar to have his brother, Jim Hanks, do all of Woody. And he sounded exactly like him.
Yeah, he did pretty good.
Once the Jim's agent found out that he was the guy, his rate went up from $800 to $2,700. Well, I had to do the same thing. A favored nation's contract is a way of getting away from paying too much for a talent along the way, right? It lowers you to the same as someone else, or raises it. Well, once Jim started getting $3,000 every time he opened his mouth, I went to the vice president of character voice, Rick Dempsey, and I said, "Rick, should I go up too?" And he went, "I talked to the head of Disney. He said, it's not a marriage made in heaven." My voice and Buzz, and I went, "I'm fine, thank you." I stuck with it.
That almost sounded like Tim Allen right there.
Did it?
Yeah, I guess that's how good you are at it. Did Tim Allen give you any advice going into doing the role of Buzz?
Get this. I talked to Rick Dempsey, and I said, "Gee, I'd like to, see Tim and thank him, because it was a lot of money, And he said, "You know what? Probably not." Because Tim was a little irritated that his brother wasn't doing the role, and I might get him on the wrong day.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, Jim Hanks did... Sorry?
So James, I never met Tim Allen.
Oh.
Never. And the last thing I would do if I met him today would mention that I did Buzz Lightyear.
So he didn't know.
Who's this guy?
Yeah, and just for the viewers out there, Pat did Buzz in all of the Toy Story treats, which were these little short films. This was way before my time. I was born in 1999. Toy Story came out in 1995, but it was actually one of, if not the first film I ever watched. And to promote the first Toy Story, ABC did these little short films featuring a majority of the Toy Story characters. And if you'd like to see them, I'll put a link to them in the corner of the video so that you can watch them. They're all very entertaining.
Yeah, I haven't seen them, but I've heard that they're fine. I mean, after all, no matter what you think or say, animation is a visual medium.
Right.
Sure, in America, they record our voices first, based on storyboards and the director's whims, but it's still a visual medium.
Oh, yeah.
When you say cartoon, it's like Daffy Duck. He's the color and everything. The voice you don't think about, but it is. And all of Pixar stuff is delightful to watch.
Absolutely. Have you seen Onward, their latest film?
No, I haven't.
It's really good.
My buddy, an old actor called Ed Asner, did Up, and he played grumpy old guy. And I've seen most all what Pixar has done. As a matter of fact, is it called Coco? What's the film that takes place in Mexico?
Coco, yep.
It's the best ever.
It was pretty good, yeah.
Delighted, because the music was interesting, and the acting was really good, and the animation was good. It's just a wonderful film. I've enjoyed everything they've done. I was in, I did Toy Story 3 and did all the exertion sounds for Tim, because Tim wasn't very good at exertion.
Oh, cool.
So I'd be called in to do his exertion sounds.
And he still has no idea. Well, Tim, if you are watching this, this is the guy that did your voice on all those times that you were busy doing Home Improvement, the Santa Claus, bunch of other stuff.
Oh, thanks, James. He'll be over here with a gun.
I doubt it.
Yes, but I don't think he's going to see my face. That'll help me.
So you voiced one of the Buzz Lightyear toys in Toy Story 2, and since you mentioned that your favorite Pixar film, or one of your favorites, was Coco, I'm just going to say this: Toy Story 2 is my favorite Pixar film.
Oh, I think it's up there with me too. Toy Story 2 is phenomenal, and I get all the toys, and it was one of the most productive characters from any animation, more than Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck, for toys, because they made all sorts of stuff for Buzz Lightyear, and kids had it. In fact, at Halloween, because I lived in Studio City, every other kid was dressed like Buzz Lightyear.
I once dressed up as Buzz Lightyear for Halloween when I was 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, Toy Story 2 came out, I was born in March of 1999. That film came out in November of 1999. And again, Toy Story 1 was one of the first films I had ever seen. At the time, I didn't get to see Toy Story 2 in the theater, but I remember it being out when I was really, really, really little.
Yeah. Well, the last one was one of my favorites, too. It was more touching than funny to me.
Oh, yeah,
really touching. And I think that's why people liked it so much. I don't know what's going to happen, but what a great franchise.
Yeah. I will say that I did notice a few similarities in between Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 4. So I really liked it for that reason.
Yeah, there was more action.
Oh, yeah.
There's more action in 2 and 4.
Absolutely, yeah.
But,
yeah, you're right.
You're a film aficionado. You know stuff that I haven't even thought about.
Yeah. And on that note, I would like to give a little shout out to my film teacher, Janet Hawkwood, who has basically taught me everything I know about being what you refer to as a film aficionado. In addition to the first guest I had on this show, Mike Peterson, who is a puppeteer who worked with Jim Henson, Janet is one of the best teachers in the arts I've ever had. So Janet, if you are watching, thank you.
Well, that's good because, teachers don't get the credit they should, and it's always good to have a champion and someone that brings you along. It's part of success is to have someone who champions you, because the difference between me saying I'm good and you saying he's good is a world.
And you're a voiceover teacher, so.
Yeah, I've taught my entire career, and I've had a passion for performance and a passion for teaching. And as I get older, I teach more than perform, and so it's been it's a delight. And I teach people all over the world. They go to patfraley.com, and there's my 30 different home study courses, private sessions, a free page with about 60 lessons. It's a delight.
Nice. And for those who are interested in learning voiceover from Pat, I'll put a link to his website in the description, and you can see what there is there. Send him an email. I won't put your email in the description.
You know what? If you go to contacts on my website, it's my email and my phone number.
All right.
Because I figure I'm available until I go to heaven, then I'm not.
All right. Well, for anyone who's interested in learning from Pat, all the info to his site will be in the description.
Yeah, you just patfraley.com. Everything I've ever done is there.
Nifty.
Right there.
Neat. So, you doing the voices of the Buzz Lightyear toys in Toy Story 2, because Tim was doing both regular Buzz and the utility belt Buzz, which I thought was hilarious. Is that because...
What's that, utility belt Buzz?
So basically, in the film, when they were searching around Al's toy barn, Buzz stumbles upon an aisle of Buzz Lightyear toys, and one of them is promoted as having this utility belt, and Buzz is like, man, I could use one of those. So he goes to look at it, and he tries to touch the belt, and then the Buzz Lightyear in which the belt is attached to, he's almost exactly like how Buzz was when he was first introduced in the film. He's like, Buzz Lightyear's Star Command, I've got an AWOL Space Ranger. Tell me I wasn't this deluded. No backtalk! I have a laser, and I will use it. And regular Buzz is almost exactly like Woody was in the film. He's like, oh, you mean a laser that's a light bulb? So he plays with it. Utility belt Buzz says, you could have killed me! What is wrong with you? So he prisons regular Buzz in one of the boxes, and basically, as the rest of the toys go down the aisle, they run into Utility Belt Buzz thinking that it is regular Buzz. So he's doing he doesn't know what they're doing, and only they think that it's regular Buzz. And even when they meet up with Woody, Jesse, Bullseye, and the Prospector, do they?
Right.
Yeah.
That brings to mind a story.
Okay.
It's quick, but when I get Ninja Turtles and Buzz Lightyear, my boys were old enough to know what I did for a living. They didn't know before.
Okay.
They just thought I did funny voices around the house. Well, they used to go to a toy store where there'd be lined up like 8 to 10 different buzzes, and I did all of them except one.
Oh.
Tim Allen did the original, and I did all the other ones.
Yeah.
Well, they'd go and push buttons, and they'd do this. They go, you hear to infinity and beyond. They go, Dad, Mr. Allen, Dad. I could tell.
Wow, your kids were really smart then.
Yeah, and they were unimpressed.
I would have been totally impressed.
Yeah, well, they could care less because you had Rob Paulsen coming over and doing the country song a cappella. They had Brad Garrett coming over. Our next door neighbor was Ed Asner, who's a famous actor. It meant nothing to them growing up in L.A. Right.
So you doing the Buzz Lightyear toys in Toy Story 2, was that because you had doubled for Tim, so you knew the voices, so, basically, so you knew that character?
We didn't make a distinction.
Okay.
And what you've described, I mainly was doing Buzz Lightyear utility belt. Now, they did have a series, a cartoon series, but Patrick Warburton was cast to do Buzz. Why? Well, because he's good, but one of the reasons I didn't audition for is because they wanted to change Buzz slightly.
Okay.
And I didn't want to do that because
Fair.
I was doing too well. It was going too well being the classic Buzz. But I don't think there was a distinction I ever heard between being the formal kind of Buzz from outer space, and Buzz being less formal.
Okay. Yeah, my next question was actually going to be, did you audition to be in Buzz Lightyear Starkman? But it looks like you just answered that for me. Thank you.
Yeah, well, once I got the job of being, you called it a substitute, or it was the voice of Buzz Lightyear, right?
Yeah.
Then I did an audition. In fact, this is funny. As I mentioned, I was making like nearly $3,000.
Right.
And I told my agent, look, here's a couple of things. They'll call, they call the agents and they say, we'd like to use To Infinity and Beyond from that toy and put it in a different toy. And I'd say, my agent would go, fine. So I made it $3,000 for doing nothing.
Wow.
But I told my agent, now let's make it really good. Fake sign my name on the contracts. Then I do nothing and get the money. So I'd be in Hawaii with my wife and 4 boys or whatever we had, and I'd get a call from my agent, and she'd go, and hang up. She'd do the song, I want my MTV, the money's for nothing, the check's for free, I want my MTV. She'd just hum the song and hang up, and I'd go, I just made $3,000.
That's
it was
funny.
a delight.
That is funny. So, as I wrap it up, you said that you were good friends with, are good friends with Ed Asner, and I have seen pictures on Bill Farmer's Twitter of you, him, Ed, and Jim Megan. It's so funny. I've met Ed, I've met Bill, and I've met Jim, and I'm meeting you kind of now. I got my iPhone in front of me.
Jim Megan is a producer. He did Tailspin and many shows that I appeared on. So he's a producer guy my age.
My family went to LA for the D23 Expo. Do you know what that is?
No.
It's like Disney Comic-Con.
Okay.
And this was in 2015. It was actually a big turning point in me realizing that I wanted to become a filmmaker, because I had been watching a lot of Disney Channel shows at the time, and a lot of Disney Channel stars were there. There was Landry Bender, Sabrina Carpenter. They were all on Disney shows I was watching, so it was kind of nice to walk by them, and even though they didn't notice me, I got to wave a bit. They were doing the 20th anniversary of the Goofy movie, which Jim Megan had written. So
he wrote that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there was
Cummings and Bill Farmer. Jim Cummings was in it. He played Pegleg.
Right, Pegleg Pete. Yeah.
Right, and Bill, of course, was Goofy.
Yeah, they were both there, as well as Rob Paulsen, Jason Marsden, and Jenna Von Oy. And I got to meet all of them. Like, I met...
No kidding.
Yeah, I met... it's funny. I met Jim Cummings, Jenna Von Oy, Rob Paulsen, Bill Farmer, and Jason Marsden. They were all signing stuff, so I went in line, chatted with them for a bit, got a picture, and oh my god, one of the best weekends I've ever had. Jim Megan, eventually my family and I went to go have some lunch. Jim Megan was sitting right down next to us, and my sister's like, that's the writer of the Goofy movie. So I went up to him and I said, hi, are you Jim Megan? And he said, yes. And he looked at my name tag and he's like, are you James?
He's a delightful guy, and I got to tell you something about that movie. Jim Cummings, Bill Farmer came from Kansas and was doing stand-up. And he got cast as Goofy, because Goofy has a Kansas dialect,
Oh, yeah.
Goofy, if you take away all he has a Kansas accent.
Gorsh!
Yeah, wonderful. And so he was kind of right, and he used to drive Jim Cummings nuts. Why? Because he said, well, he's sort of like Goofy. He'll come to the studio and go, oh, hit the mic, whoop. And it was very funny to see Jim work with him, because he was always rolling his eyes. I'm with Goofy, right? And by the way, Rob Paulsen was in that movie.
Right, he was Pete's son, PJ. Rob chatted up my family for quite a while, talking about his experiences here in Halifax. He said he loves Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, which is all the maritime area of Canada. He just loves Canada.
Well, he grew up in Detroit.
Right.
He loved hockey, so Canada,
Yeah, he talked all about his how Gordie Howe has had an influence on him, because he said he was almost a hockey player.
Yeah. He was like, his heroes are hockey players.
That sounds like Rob.
Yeah.
So Rob Paulsen, Jim Cummings, Bill Farmer, Jason Marsden, Jenna Von Oy, Jim Megan, the people who are at the Goofy Movie panel. If you are watching this, I would love to have you guys on this podcast at some point. So send me a message if you're interested. I'd love to have you come on.
Now, they won't see you, but they'll hear you, right?
For anyone who's watching who's wondering how this is working, Pat and I are seeing each other. We're doing this over Zoom on my phone. I'm just audio recording it, so I do apologize if the sound is kind of bad. I am working on that at the moment, so I'm doing my best.
The sound is probably going to be perfect, and it's really good they don't see me.
Unless they're looking at some of these photographs that I've put in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would like to talk a little bit about Ed Asner, and not to ramble too much, but Ed Asner was also there at D23 when I went. And can I tell you the story?
Oh, of course.
So my family and I had been wanting to meet Bill Farmer, Jim Cummings. I knew they were going to be there. I was dying to meet them. The second that we got into the Anaheim Convention Center, I was like, where are they? So we were walking by, and my dad stopped me. He's like, James, look, it's Ed Asner. And my dad loved Mary Tyler Moore and Lou Grant.
Oh, yeah,
and
back in the day.
And I knew of Ed Asner from Elf. Have you ever seen that film?
Oh, have I? I see it every year. In
Same.
fact, Ed told me, I said, once I said, Ed, who was really good that made you better? And he went, Daniel Trevani, who was on Hill Street Blues, and Will Ferrell. And I went, what? Will Ferrell made you good? He goes, yeah.
Wow.
And I said, I got to get really good fast.
Wow.
And I said, give me an example. And he goes, well, when he put his gum under the banister, I said, you can't do that. You can't. And I said, so what? He said, when I saw Will Ferrell go, I know you. And I saw the reality of that. You know how Will Ferrell will play some stuff and he'll be so real. Well, that impressed Ed. And so
wow.
because one of my boys said, that's the best Santa Claus I've ever seen.
He did it pretty well, yeah.
You can't be better.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, so my dad knew Ed Asner from Mary Tyler Moore, Lou Grant, Elf, of course. It's my family's favorite Christmas film to watch. We just watched it the other day. And also from Up. And when I was in line to meet Ed Asner, Pete Docter and Jonas Rivera, the director and producer of Up, were right there. They were right at Ed's table. It's my turn to go up to... Have you seen Up?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's brilliant.
Oh yeah. So it was my turn to go up to Ed. I went up to him and I said, "Hi there, my name is James." And I think I freaked him out because he just pushed his head back and he just looked at me kind of funny. And so there's like a minute of silence almost. Pete and Jonas they got a kick out of it, and Ed looks at me after not saying much and he goes, "Get to the back of the line, kid."
In Mary Tyler Moore, and then as he got older, he realized it worked for him. So I'll be at his house and he'll answer his phone, "What do you want?"
That sounds like him.
Because you know what? If you can be grumpy and get away with it, what would that be like?
Yeah.
He would love it. I've got to tell you a fast story. He was at my house on my birthday, and I was 41.
Okay.
So it's 30 years ago, or 20 years ago. I said, "What were you doing when you were my age on your birthday?" He goes, "Well," he said, "I wasn't on my face, but I was on my knees." He said that I had the best year of my career, 50,000, and then nothing. And then an audition came along for the Mary Tyler Moore show.
Wow. Yeah. So eventually, when I was meeting Ed, I remember when I asked him if he would mind signing an Up poster, because he had a couple of pictures around. So I said, would you mind signing this? And he just kind of looked funny at me, and then at the picture, and then looked back up at me, and he goes, "So, you're James?" I said, "Yes, I am." And he goes, "And what are you when you're not James?" And then I introduced him to my dad, because my dad loved him on TV and in films. And I said, "Ed, this is my dad." And they shake hands, and Ed's like, "How do you put up with this kid?" So I took a picture with Ed, and he looked at me and my family, and he says, "They're doing a good job raising you."
Listen, I know we're getting close, but I'll tell you how I met him.
That was going to be my next question.
He lived across the street from me, literally across the street.
Oh, cool.
And he had a red door, one of those shiny red doors. And Renee one day called me over, and I knew that, I didn't know it. He was the president of our union, but I had not met him.
Oh, wow.
And she went, look over there. And on his door, the neo-Nazis had spray painted in black a skull and crossbones and put "Kill Jews."
Ooh.
Now, Ed's Jewish. So I went, oh, really? And of course, immediately the neo-Nazis went to call that into the station, ABC, NBC, CBS. So I went over with a rag and kerosene and wiped off the skull and crossbones and the message. Well, he came over, so when we delighted to see all the trucks, the satellite trucks come by and not know where to go, because there was nothing. So about 2 days later, he came over to the house, and he said, "Are you the kid that took that sign off my door?" I went, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I just wanted to thank you." I went, "Oh, no problem. You don't think that I want other people to know that Jews live in our neighborhood?" And he went, and I tickled his funny bone, and you can, from your experience with it, you can see where he's got this weird kind of grumpy sense of humor.
Right.
From that day on, he became such a close friend of mine, and we've been friends for, I guess, 30 years now.
That's wonderful, yeah. Well, Ed, if you are watching this, I hope that you do remember me. I remember the next day after I met him, we had just met the Goofy movie cast, and I walked by Ed and he sees me, he goes, "James, how are ya?" And my mom's right there, and she's like, "Do you remember him?" And he goes, "Remember him? I couldn't sleep last night because of this kid."
Listen, real close. She was doing a movie in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Okay.
And I told my aunt, who was older, she was in her late 70s, early 80s, and she said, "Well, I'll go down and see him." I said, "Do," because he said that. Well, when she came down, I talked to her later, and I said, "How'd it go?" He goes, "Well, he wouldn't let me go home. He'd get out of his chair and do a scene and go, 'Hey, Martha, sit down,' and talk to me all day long." So he's that way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So right now would be the time when I go in to ask any fan questions, but nobody sent me any. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
I don't think so. I've told you stories because you excited me to tell them, and we talked about the old days, and I did get to work with on the Flintstones, the Jetsons,
Right.
Before Scooby-Doo, and Yogi Bear and Huckleberry Hound, and work with the original cast members because I got the tail end of the first generation of voiceover. So that was a delight. And some of your older folks that listen to this will enjoy hearing even those titles.
I have well, it is called Nostalgia Talk, so I have a feeling a lot of people are getting very nostalgic.
Yeah, if they're not dead, they're probably nostalgic.
And normally to end the show, I would say peace out, but I thought maybe as a special treat, do you think maybe Buzz Lightyear could close us out by saying his signature catchphrase?
Yeah, sure. To infinity and beyond. And, of course, residuals. They have to be there.
Right.
And peace out. And here's Crane, Lord, to you, saying peace out.
Thank you very much, Pat, and there will be more Nostalgia Talk coming really soon.